What goes on in a woman's mind when she notices a man she likes? What does she do next, and what does she expect from him? The end of the year is approaching, so I suggest we recall some basics of female psychology and behavior during the initial acquaintance stage. This is very important to know so as not to get confused later on. Ready to dive into women's thoughts? Let's start right from the moment of acquaintance. When a woman first meets a man, she very quickly categorizes him. Yes, that's exactly why I often say that first impressions are incredibly important. This doesn't mean that once you get a label, you can't get rid of it and get another. It just means that things will be a bit more complicated from now on. Hence the importance of positioning yourself correctly from the very beginning, knowing yourself well, and understanding which qualities are worth demonstrating. This is necessary to avoid falling into the first category, the category of a definitive no. You know this category. There is no ambiguity, you are not liked, and no one is planning anything. As you've already guessed, the second category is the interesting, I need to dig deeper to see what's hidden there category. This is precisely what leads to more ambiguous relationships, because at this stage she thinks there might be something between you. Note, there's no certainty yet, just a okay, let's see stance. You could say you've passed the preliminary selection. These things happen very quickly during dating, and you need to be aware of that. Of course, the context must be appropriate, especially the woman's psychological state. Why do I say this? Sometimes women are simply not ready for dating, or don't want to meet anyone at the moment. A woman will categorize a man upon meeting only if she herself is looking for a partner, or is open to new relationships. Between us, this applies to most women, but there are circumstances when they are severely depressed, withdrawn into themselves and their problems. In such a state, they are completely closed to dating and won't even think about it. It also happens that at the moment of meeting, a woman is completely focused on some matter of her own. She is not in the mood to assess the potential of your relationship. And then there are women who have already managed to categorize you without your knowledge. Perhaps you just forgot that you've already had your first meeting, and therefore are still naively confident that there's still a chance. You are sure that something can still come of it, while she, for her part, has already decided everything and placed you in her mental box. I understand how terrible what I'm about to say sounds. It's terrible because we shouldn't label people, right? But that's exactly what happens when it comes to things like this. But at the same time, think for a second. What do you do? What goes on in your head when you meet an unfamiliar woman? I'm very curious to know. In any case, it's very important to understand one thing. This preliminary selection is not binding. In other words, if a woman thinks, he might be interesting to me, it doesn't mean she'll want to go any further. This is precisely what can be difficult to understand, and it further complicates relationships. Sometimes someone likes you, but in reality, this woman doesn't want anything more. She simply wants to, so to speak, window shop. You understand? She just wants to enjoy the moment and the conversation, but has no intention of getting involved in anything serious, not even the slightest game of seduction. She stays at a distance, simply enjoying the view, pleasant conversation, or light flirting. Well, or she might genuinely want to go further. That happens too, of course. But it's important to understand clearly that at this stage she simply thought, okay, why not? I should take a closer look. That's why nothing is decided in advance in relationships. A woman can pre-select you very quickly and then change her mind because you either decided it was already in the bag or later shot yourself in the foot and ruined everything. This is precisely why I so often pester you with questions about sexualization. I constantly say that from the very beginning, there must be a phase of establishing connection and comfort. All of this needs to be built so that a woman not only preliminarily selects you, but ultimately chooses you definitively. I know it sounds like everything is terrible, like you're that one single sperm cell among millions of others that has to stand out to win the race, but I'm just laying things out so you understand the essence of what's happening, the mechanics themselves. It's not that terrible and not that ruthless. Understand me correctly. I'm just analyzing the details, so no need to panic. To avoid failing this preliminary selection, it's important to understand what specific qualities make women want to take things further. You need to know how to position yourself correctly and showcase your strengths to then move on to more sexualized communication. And I'll remind you, sexualization is not always direct talk about sex, but, as you've already understood, you need to know a lot. At first glance, this may seem like a real headache, but ultimately, once you understand the mechanics, everything will fall into place quite easily and naturally. Much happens on its own and unconsciously, but if you want to be successful in the future, you simply need to bring your understanding of these things to a conscious level. This is precisely what will give you a huge advantage. So, the second stage, the behavior of a woman who has become interested in a man. What happens in the mind of a woman who has noticed a guy she likes depends on one thing, whether she has decided to go further or not, and believe me, this decision will immediately reflect on her behavior. She might well decide not to proceed. In that case, at some point, you'll just catch her eye, and if you're sensitive enough, or even hypersensitive, you'll surely feel a slight electric jolt, a fleeting connection, something that flashed between you for a second. But that's where it will end. This might confuse you. In reality, it's a sure sign that yes, there was something about you that caught her attention, but she decided nothing would come of it, and she wouldn't take any steps. But if she decided she wanted to give it a chance, if she decided to dig deeper, that's when her behavior towards you will change drastically. But remember, a woman acts cautiously. During the seduction process, a woman is passive. Well, or not so passive. That's a matter of perspective. But one thing is certain, she won't do the lion's share of the work. The first thing she'll do, now that she's set her sights on you, is try to make sure you notice her in return. It's logical. Since I've noticed you, my goal now is for you to see me too. Therefore, she will start presenting herself in the best possible light and attracting attention. It's worth noting here, this second stage strongly depends on temperament. I'll talk about another type of girl a little later, but most women who feel quite confident, active, and decisive will do everything to be noticed. This will manifest in their behavior. They will take up more space, speak louder, laugh louder, look in your direction very often, to the point where you physically feel their gaze, and also turn towards her. They will try to talk to you. They will talk about you to others. In short, they will signal their presence, but in a rather indirect way. Understand? So as not to be too intrusive. Because excessive pressure is too obvious, it's a failure, and women don't want that. They don't like to be too blunt in their approaches. Yes, there are exceptions, but most still prefer to act very subtly. They will attract attention, including with their appearance. If they know you will meet again soon, you will notice that they will put in considerable effort to prepare for the meeting. This can be expressed in their choice of clothing, a new hairstyle, makeup, anything. But if she just happened to meet you by chance and doesn't have the ability to magically pull a little super sexy black dress out of her closet, sorry for the cliche, you'll see something else. In her desire to attract attention, she will instinctively start making certain gestures and striking certain poses. For example, her head will be slightly raised, her neck exposed. This makes us appear taller. Her chest pushed forward. This works. Of course, her hair will come into play. This in itself is not an indicator, but pay attention. She might nervously and regularly twirl her strands, adjust her hairstyle, tug at her clothes, simply to look as attractive as possible. You know what I mean? This will manifest in her mood, in her openness, and also in her voice. You will notice that when a woman talks to a man, or in the presence of a man she likes, the timbre of her voice changes. This, naturally, she wants to be more attractive. You'll notice the play of lips, the play of glances, everything that allows a woman to look more seductive. Remember, or learn, if you haven't heard this from me before, to seduce a man, a woman most often just needs to be seductive. Yes, female passivity takes over, but for her, attracting attention like this is already a huge step. Now, about the exceptions I mentioned earlier, this applies to women with very, very low self-esteem. They, on the contrary, completely retreat into their shells and seem to disappear. This happens. There are very introverted women who are completely hesitant to show their affection for a man, and this manifests precisely in such avoidance. I'm sure you've encountered this before or are now recalling similar situations from your own experience. In any case, you will notice a sharp change in behavior around a specific man. It doesn't matter if he's just standing nearby or if they are directly communicating. The woman's behavior changes drastically, and from this alone, you can understand, aha, there's something here, something is going on. And finally, the third point, how does a woman let a man know she likes him? If she's noticed a guy and decided she wants to get to know him better, what will she do? She'll start dropping hints, casting her line. This is a logical continuation of everything I've just talked about. She'll do everything to make you approach her. She won't make the first move in the literal sense. For her, the first move is to drop you a hint, and then it's your job to grab onto it. Understand, you can beat around the bush for years. I've seen stories that dragged on for 10 to 15 years. Personally, even 3 months is too long for me, but everyone has their own patience and their own perspective. I've seen too many drawn-out stories where people circle around each other. Everyone is more or less aware of the mutual attraction, but in the end, nothing happens. This might just be your case. You suspect she likes you, but you're not making a move because you're waiting for more signals from her, but she's unlikely to give you anything more. I'm sorry to tell you this directly, but women act very subtly. She'll cast out feelers and give hints, but she won't do more. It's up to you to approach her and ask her out, to make an offer that clearly shows your romantic interest in her. But be careful. All of this should happen in stages. As I've already said, first you need to establish a connection and comfort. Inviting a woman to your place when you haven't really communicated with her, and the interest is still exclusively superficial, even very superficial, is too fast and abrupt. You need to follow the rules of the game. As for those very fishing rods that she will cast at you, these are clear signs of interest, a kind of green light, screaming, "Go ahead, act, do something." Information about these signs can be found anywhere. The internet is simply teeming with it. Yes, some things are overrated, but overall they are truthful, so you can study this issue a little. The main thing is to understand that the signs of interest you notice are themselves an invitation to go further. A woman truly expects initiative from you, so take the lead. At best, she might seize upon your hint herself, for example, provoking you to take her number, or upon hearing about your hobbies, saying, "Oh, I love that too," as if hinting, "Come on, suggest we do it together." But that's where it stops. When a woman notices a man she likes, she won't go beyond hints because she's afraid her feelings are unreciprocated. She needs to make sure first that you've noticed her too and are ready to proceed, so she settles for little. She notices you, attracts your attention, and then gracefully passes the hot potato back to you, as if saying, "Okay, now you see that I've noticed you, and you've noticed me. Go ahead, do your job, do the man's job." Perhaps many cliches were used today, but that's the essence. This is the most important thing I wanted to convey. I hope I haven't confused you too much and have managed to highlight the main points. I would be glad if you ask clarifying questions or share whether your stories align with what I've described, or if things were completely different for you. The more you share your experiences, the richer the discussion becomes and the more people it can help understand themselves. I share what I know from my studies, from coaching practice, and of course from personal experience. And although there are always exceptions, discussing them is incredibly interesting. That's all from me. A huge thank you to everyone who listened to the end. You are the most resilient. See you soon.